I hope many of you are having the happy childhood memories of Sesame Street that I am as I hear today's music. As I said earlier, I do believe strongly in the value of play as a spiritual practice for all ages. Reverend Laura is going to talk more about that. But for right now, what I want to talk about is how that relates to faith formation, and especially faith formation for our children. I've said before, since the beginning of my time here at MSUS last fall, that Reverend Laura and I are agreed that right now, in this continued time of pandemic and uncertainty, everything we are doing is an experiment. That's not just true with faith formation, but with all of church life. We are taking an intentionally playful approach to faith formation. We're not worrying about success or failure of our ideas, but about learning. Not just the learning that happens in faith formation experiences as we traditionally think of them, but learning about what our families, especially those with children, currently need and want in terms of faith formation. We want to find ways to offer families the most benefit of my time, which means finding out what is meeting actual needs rather than what we guess might be useful or what has been useful in the past. I am now just past the 6-month anniversary of my first day working at MSUS. In those 6 months, we have tried lots of experiments. The most popular so far has been the monthly family fun events held in person and up until this point outdoors. We had a Halloween bash at the Andersons' home in October, a fall festival in November, the solstice celebration around bonfires in December, sledding in January, and an extra opportunity for families to gather and say farewell to the Oakley Drive building before the wider farewell service in February. This month, as Reverend Laura mentioned, we will be able to be indoors together, gathering this coming Saturday afternoon for a service project, packing meals at Feed My Starving Children. You can see the news from the office for all those details, and don't forget to sign up with me if you'd like to participate. These family fun events feel like a big win in terms of the response that we've gotten from families, and so they will continue for as long as that is true. In the fall, I also tried sending monthly packets to families with a letter and a simple activity or a small gift, starting in September with a keychain with a tag that reads, "With love from your MSUS family." Though a few people were quite enthusiastic, these packets never had the level of response from families that the events did. And so in consultation with Reverend Laura, I decided to let them go and focus on other ways to connect. Again, focusing on what is meeting the actual needs. However, if those packets were meeting a need for you or for your family, please do let me know that, and I may send an occasional special packet your way, though probably not on a monthly schedule. I recently reread an article on the UUA website titled "Simple Online Faith Formation." It was written in August of 2020, only about 5 months into the pandemic, when we had no idea that it would last this long. Some parts of that article are outdated now, but much of it still feels relevant to me today. I was especially struck by this line: "This is not a time for a complex faith formation program. Our children and youth need to connect, to be cared for, to care for others, and to make meaning together of this time." That just really resonated with me. And as with so much in faith formation, I think that this is not only what our children and youth need, but what all of us need: to connect, to be cared for, to care for others, and to make meaning together of this time. Another line in the article said it even more plainly: "Go simple. Let go of previous lesson plans. Focus on connecting." This is, again, an even more explicit instruction to us. Although I know that there are some families who are craving the structure of a classroom program with a curriculum like we used to do in what we maybe think of as the before times, the demand is just not there yet. Not enough families are ready to come back into that kind of setting. And as the article was explaining, that's not what most of us need right now, is that highly structured, information-centered kind of curriculum. We need to be connecting. One thing that has happened is that a few parents have asked me if there are curricula that they can use at home at their own pace. And the answer is absolutely yes, there are. I was happy to consult with those parents about their kids' grade levels, their abilities, and the topics that the parents thought they wanted to have their kids learning about at this point. And then I sent the parents appropriate resources from the UUA's Tapestry of Faith curriculum collection. If any of that interests you, please reach out to me and I will find something to share with your family. And when the time is right, we will experiment with what might work in the classroom setting at this point, either kids only or multi-generational. For example, there's a curriculum on stewardship that is for adults and kids together and that uses play as one of the learning tools. It uses water stewardship as a way to talk about caring for what matters to us. That might be a great fit for us at some point. I'm also interested in offering resources to parents, such as the Parents as Spiritual Guides curriculum, which I'll offer later this spring if there's enough interest. So keep your eyes out for those kinds of invitations. But for now, let's return to the guidance to focus on connecting. That has been a very intentional focus for me and for Reverend Laura as we have had ongoing conversations about family ministry at MSUS at this point in our congregation's journey together as a faith community. I sometimes half joke that although my official title is Director of Family Ministry, maybe my job in this moment in time is really something more like Minister of Connection and Joy, because Reverend Laura and I both believe that connection and joy are what our children and their families and all of us need most right now, not information about UU history or our principles or world religions, important as those topics are. Our kids and their families, many of whom have been under such strain for 2 years now as they try to keep everyone safe while also living a meaningful and healthy life, they need to feel connected to us, to each other, and to our faith. And so that is our focus. We will continue to experiment how to do that and how to hold a sense of playfulness as we do. Reverend Laura recently asked me in a meeting if I was worried about the future of faith formation, not knowing what it will be like post-pandemic. I said I certainly do think about it, but that I would say I am more curious than worried. I am curious to see how faith formation evolves, knowing that it has always been evolving, and that while the pandemic certainly has impacted that evolution, faith formation was changing in the 21st century long before the pandemic. So I will continue to hold a sense of curiosity, as well as a commitment to doing what I can to meet our family's needs, while keeping a sense of lightness about it. Lightness doesn't mean I take it lightly, that I think it's not important, but rather that I hold it lightly, knowing that none of us have all the answers right now, and that no one is served by me being anxious about that. It may be that for a while we gather mostly to play, to enjoy our family fun events, perhaps to begin to have picnics in parks or in someone's backyard when things are warmer later in the year, maybe a game night, to play, to connect, to find and create joy together. Although our service title today quotes a line from the Sesame Street theme song, "Come and play, everything's A-OK," we know that everything's not A-OK in our world right now. But we also know that play can give us moments of feeling okay, of being okay, despite it all. We all need that respite, whatever our age. And the more we can engage this time of uncertainty with a sense of playfulness and experimentation without attachment to outcomes, the healthier and happier we will all be. May it be so.
What a joy. God, it's such a treat to have you all here. So this past fall, we held a minister's retreat in our area, and the title of the retreat was called Play as a Form of Resistance. It kind of makes me chuckle because I remembered talking about play, but I have no idea where the resistance came in, except for maybe it was a catchy title that drew us all in because it had a level of seriousness there. One exercise in the workshop was to write a history of play in your life. I was too busy to pay attention to the assignment ahead of time, but I remember taking time to write something during the open evening of that workshop. I searched for my essay so I could share some of it here, but I could not find it on my computer. This is sort of par for the course, given the challenges of the past few years of COVID. Things are kind of slipping through the cracks a little bit. But I'll take it as an invitation to reflect on play once again and write it once again. So I do remember finding joy and energy as I looked back on my life. I've done a lot of reflection and journaling and storytelling over my lifetime, but writing the history of play in my life was absolutely something new, something I never even really considered pondering. I encourage you to do the same. And I'm going to actually plan a night, it'll be out in the news from the office and on the calendar on March 29th, for us to come together and share what insights you got as you wrote the history of play in your life. It's really interesting. So a thread I found in my own life was the love of jigsaw puzzles. I was the middle of the three girls, and I have an older brother, and there was always a lot going on in the house, and I sort of slid under the radar, sat in front of the television, and did puzzles endlessly. There was something about this form of solitary play that took me away into a land of shape and color and concentration. I know that when I do jigsaw puzzles, I'm kind of lost in time. I stay up too late. I promise myself just 5 more minutes, and then I disregard my alarm. I also remember how some of my prior jobs, working in special education and at a local cafe in Santa Cruz, California, allowed me to play for a living. At least I felt like it was play. Is everything okay? Yes. Oh, good. I just wanted to make sure. Oh, good. So at least I felt like it was a play. I remember going on excursions with students in my special education class. We would wander the streets of San Francisco. It was a great gig, singing songs and pointing out things that brought us joy. And then I remember working at a cafe, the Saturn Cafe in Santa Cruz, California, and enjoying, it was play for me to take orders at the counter and then to assemble meals quickly in the kitchen and then to find the tables where the meal belonged. We didn't have numbers or cards or anything. You literally had to take an order, remember, and then head out into this very busy restaurant and find the table where the food belonged. And it was, needless to say, quite entertaining for some of the diners as they watched us wander. Playing with animals and children in my family were also highlights. My family plays this highly competitive card game called Pounce. It's played with a combination of card skill and verbal and psychological skill, since playful banter is a big part of the game. And it's not pretty. And it has become a bit of a hazing ritual for significant others and new members of the families. Just in case you wonder, Linda usually sits out. It's too much for her. What I found most interesting about writing this play autobiography is that simply writing it, simply thinking of those times and places where play was central in my life, brought me joy. You know that feeling, like when a memory of laughter or silliness or a shared moment of joyful energy comes into your mind and you are hit by a physical feeling inside that mirrors how you felt then. That's what writing this sermon has become for me. It's stunning to see how many articles on play as a spiritual practice exist online. Go ahead and do a little Google search and you'll see them. They are endless. And I pulled up several of them and I assembled it into what I call my sermon reading packet. And I found myself more curious than usual about the content. I also struggled with how on earth can we focus on play when the world is as it is. Sorry, I know it's a little severe to keep thinking about it, but honestly, with the real live war visible on our televisions and trans and don't say gay bills out in the atmosphere and a slew of other heartbreaks, it feels frivolous to talk about play and to hear songs about Sesame Street and being green. But the creators of that series had the mission of, through Sesame Street's engaging and lovable monsters, puppets, and diverse human cast, we help you teach young children to become smarter, stronger, and kinder. I knew that's what they were doing, and I knew that the playful characters in the music could draw in a child and their adult and make them willing learners and ultimately better human beings. And maybe that's what play can do for us as well. I remember I worked in this retreat center in the Adirondacks after I graduated from college. It wasn't a happy summer. My parents had separated and I was angry and devastated. I was an intern at what's called a great camp named Sagamore, which offered educational workshops to adults. I remember coming away from that summer with one primary thought. I decided that I really did not like adults. When I translate that into current times, I realized that what I didn't like was the seriousness and the earnestness of adults, the way that they were in their heads too much. They were so self-conscious and they were transparent about this positioning in new situations and the awkwardness of that. I'd come from college where my peers worked hard and played hard, where their rough edges were front and center, and where we watched each other in moments of humility and failure and joy. The adult packaging I witnessed that summer did not make me look forward to becoming an adult. And now, as an adult, I see myself falling into the same traps that I loathed as a graduate. I'm too often in my head, too serious, too earnest. Often I take this calling of inviting all of you and others deeper into this faith I love as too heavy of a burden, something one can succeed or fail in, a challenge, something that's more of a challenge than a delight. I think I need to Sesame Street-ize my life. Remember to sing and skip and play and laugh and be silly, to lighten the heck up. I know I'm being a little extreme, but you get my gist. Last night, I took my mom to a concert to see Chastity Brown in Minneapolis. I have to say that this slow returning back to life has been super invigorating. Chastity Brown is described as a banjo-playing soul singer, a rocking, rolling encyclopedia of roots music. Last night, she played the guitar and the keyboard in a rocking and soulful way, and she shared stories about her life and her music along the way. She's a queer, mixed-race woman who clearly got her musical abilities from her father, since she described her white mother as unable to even hold a beat while clapping. At one point, she sat at the keyboard and she spoke of the weight of the past few years, calling out specifically George Floyd and how we've come to be known as the city where that atrocity took place. She said, "Anger can get stuck in my body. I need to choose to be hopeful. Anger is necessary, but I also need to be happy. I need to be silly." Chastity described what sociologists, psychologists, and theologians who study play have quantified. We need play to survive and thrive. We need it to release, to refill our hearts and our spirits, to take a break from the burdens of life and the busyness of being. Dr. Stuart Brown, a psychologist and the founder of the National Institute of Play, defines play as any activity that brings a sense of pleasure and enjoyment done for its own sake, rather than for any practical purpose or outcome. For this reason, play can take many forms. It can be surfing, geocaching, I never know how to say that, something like that. Reading, rollerblading, video games, painting, movies, board games, even flirting and daydreaming. We are taught in American society that we need to be productive. Productivity is rewarded in our 24/7 economy where time is money. I think about my mother, who's 87, many of you know her, and she still is frustrated and expresses disappointment and shame in not getting done all the things that she set out to do in a day. Yikes, just talk about being hardwired to be productive. I get it. I really get it. In order to counter this phenomenon and to keep myself wandering away from the land of shoulds and the disappointment of not making it through my own ridiculously long to-do list each day, I turned to one of my favorite writers to shed light on play and joy. You've heard me speak of her before, Anne Lamotte. In her book, Almost Everything, Notes on Hope, writes, "Our yokes are heavy. Healthy people need to unburden sometimes unpleasant feelings and information, such as hating everything about life and everyone on earth, and hoping that the bad people are killed by snakes, or that they just ate all the frosting off of Safeway carrot cake because they were feeling fragile." She says it's normal, and in fact, increasingly so, for anyone in the right mind to feel or do these things, and so therapeutic to tell the miserable truth. She continues, how can we know all this and yet somehow experience joy? And she says that's how we were designed, for awareness and curiosity. Diana was talking about curiosity. We are hardwired with curiosity inside us because life knew that this would keep us going even in bad sailing. We see the newborn energy of the universe most flagrantly in the sea and in the entire jello wiggle of a baby. You know what I'm talking about. The universe expresses its most showingly as children, and it moves through children of all ages. Your nephew, baby Jesus, Ruth Gordon and Harold and Ma shimmying at 80 in a cocktail dress. Life feeds anyone who is open to the taste of food, wonder, and glee. It's immediacy. We see this toward the end of many people's lives when everything in their wasted body fights to stay alive for a few more kisses, or bites of ice cream, or one more hour with you. Life is still flowing through them. Life is them. Anne continues, we take children with very little and the joy of their nightly bath, the play and the purity of combing a toy horse's mane or of brushing their favorite doll's hair, fitting things together, kids sharing a mayonnaise sandwich, making fart noises and speaking fake foreign languages, becoming robots and jungle animals, creating futures out of half-deflated soccer balls, magic and hilarity out of absolutely nothing. We hear about this often in war-torn zones that kids continue to play. She said, we see the pleasure of man with Lou Gehrig's disease in a wheelchair at a baseball park with his wife on a warm, clear night. The freshets of joy when things temporarily work, the senses, the muscles, the mind. We start with that freshness, which cannot be created or destroyed. That's magic, or the human spirit, or hope, whatever you want to call it, to captivate, to share contented time. Some of us periodically need to repeat the joy training, rehabilitate the part of us that naturally dims or gets injured by my busyness or just too much bad news to bear. As I said, there's many articles about joy and play as a spiritual practice. Unfortunately, we have to practice it sometimes. Don Garrett from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Lehigh Valley describes a practice by Thich Nhat Hanh called 3 Doors of Liberation. And he says, when we enter these doors, we dwell in concentration and are liberated from fear, confusion, and sadness. So here's the 3 doors really quickly. The first one is emptiness. So emptiness is just forgetting, clearing out that mind of all your busyness, spending time just in the beauty of art or nature or gazing into the eyes of someone we love. We just spend too much time being full of ourselves or preoccupied with our concerns, and this kind of emptiness helps us lighten up and get out of our own way. The second is singleness, and this refers to the difficulty that many of us have when we try to just sort of do one thing, when we don't allow that train of thought to go crazy as we're doing something, it means that we have to kind of get out of our way and not become intoxicated by our own thoughts and opinions. We need to stop and stop thinking. And then the third is aimlessness. It's just to know that there's nothing to do, nothing to realize, no program, no agenda. I hate that. That's like my hardest one, is the aimlessness. I don't know how to really sit and do something for an hour and not be productive and not feel guilty, but aimlessness is one of the three. So emptiness, singleness, and aimlessness, it may sound like weirdly unattainable goals, but it's striking how accurately they describe play. When you play, you're not full of yourself. We're not looking for meaning, and there's no winning or losing. We must enjoy play for its own sake. So I'm encouraging all of you to consider the importance of play. I really want you to actually consider writing that personal history of play. Where did it show up in your lives, from childhood to now? I think it could be illuminating for all of you. I'm also encouraging you to take time for play and to embrace it, to laugh and to lose track of time, to find places and activities that bring you joy and to indulge in them as if your life depends on it, because it does. So I'm wondering about all of you and play in your life. As I was writing this, I kept thinking about Janice Senkot and Purple during our coffee houses. Janice has this, maybe Janice could even bring Purple to the screen, but she has this stuffed animal Purple that shows up every coffee house. And you know, as an adult, sometimes I'm literally embarrassed to imagine we're watching this, and yet it's so delightful that playfulness just allows us all to let go. So I'm curious about where you see play showing up, either in this community or in your own life. Oh, you have it, Janice? Oh, you're muted, Janice.
This is Purple. Purple believes in peace.
Purple believes in peace. Amen. Actually, I can see we're running out of time, so we may need to talk about play in our community and in our own lives together afterwards. But I do want to call out about this community and playing as literal playing of music, and how that to me is one place that this community laughs and connects and finds joy and can kind of elevate any day. So with that, Bruce, we're going to do hymn 1024 in our teal hymnal. I encourage those of you who are here to stand. The words will be on the screen. It's when the Spirit says do. And just like before, we'll have the hymn leaders up here, people at home. Oh, maybe they're just singing. No, you're coming up. And people at home will be muted so you can sing along.